You ever spend good money on a gun you were supposed to trust and still feel that hesitation when it's on you? I did, more than once. Bigger mags, red dots, lighter frames, all the stuff people swear by. On paper, better. In my head, smarter, but something never settled and I ignored it. Nobody pushes revolvers anymore. They're outdated, overpriced, too limited. That's what I told myself. Wrote them off without really testing it. Then one of those better guns had a moment. Not a failure you brag about. Just enough to make me pause and hate that I noticed. So I went back to a revolver. This video is about 7 revolvers that are still worth every penny in 2026. Didn't go how I expected. The revolver didn't feel modern, didn't look faster, didn't win on paper. It just removed the doubt. I tried to replace that feeling with newer guns. Couldn't. These 7 stayed. And one makes everything else feel like a compromise. Honestly, didn't want to put the Smith Wesson 686 Plus on this list. Felt like a cop-out, the safe answer. The one guys throw out when they don't have anything interesting to say. I've stood at a glass counter in San Antonio, late afternoon, heat, still coming off the parking lot, and skipped right over it for something flashier. Brighter finish, better story, something that felt like it had personality. I told myself I'd better taste than the boring pick. But if a revolver is still worth buying in 2026, it has to prove it after you own it, not at the counter. Then I owned those better guns. Range days, cleaning nights, parts hunts online at midnight, little annoyances stacking up, nothing catastrophic, just enough friction to make you start asking quiet questions you don't say out loud. And every time I cut through it, what do I actually keep? What do I actually use? The 686 Plus kept showing up again. Not because it impressed me, because it didn't argue. 7 rounds that don't feel awkward. Balance that sits right in your hand without fighting you. A trigger that just does its job. No drama, no weird ownership headaches. I keep trying to replace it with something more interesting. Haven't pulled it off yet. And the next one? That thing almost pushed me the opposite direction completely. I thought the Chiappa Rhino was a gimmick for people with too much money. Guy next to me on the range, older, quiet, not saying a word, sets the Rhino 60 DS down like it belongs there. Long, low barrel, weird profile that makes you look twice just to understand it. I remember thinking, of course, this is what he brought. Didn't look right, didn't feel serious, and the price made it worse. I figured it was one of those guns people defend because they already bought it. Got it in my hands later, and it felt wrong. Grip angle, sight picture, the way it sits. Nothing lined up with what I was used to. I kept adjusting, trying to make it feel normal. It didn't. Then I watched it run again, and the weirdness started explaining itself. The muzzle didn't act like my other revolvers. The recoil came back different. Lower, flatter, less like the gun was trying to climb out of your hands. That ugly shape wasn't decoration, and that's what stuck. I kept noticing it, not in a good way at first, just couldn't ignore it. At some point, I stopped trying to figure it out. I just stopped arguing with it. I didn't buy it because I liked it. I kept it because I couldn't ignore it. Still don't love it the way I love a classic revolver, but I stopped calling it a mistake. Last August, Texas heat pushing 104. The range felt like it was cooking us alive. Sweat running into my eyes. Hands already slick before we even started. Me and Mike were pushing defensive drills hard, trying to beat the storm rolling in. I brought the Taurus 8.56 executive grade as a budget wheel gun test, and I expected it to fold. For that price, something had to give. We went straight into weak hand draws and failure drills. Grip started slipping almost immediately, that factory texture turning useless once your hands were soaked. Every draw felt a little less certain than it should have. Then we dropped into the dirt, working from cover, sand everywhere. Awkward angles, rushed reloads, no clean footing, and I kept waiting for it to fall apart. It didn't. That's what got me. Not impressive, not flashy, just nothing breaking, nothing getting weird when it had every excuse to. Mike just glanced over at one point. like he was expecting me to say something. I didn't. The grips? Still the weak spot. I swapped them. Had to. But the gun itself never felt cheap where it mattered. I went in expecting the tourist name to explain the price. Instead, the gun made the name feel like the only thing holding it back. And the next one, smaller, cleaner, and completely different kind of expensive problem. I was in Austin last month, one of those clean shops where even the used guns look expensive. The Kimber K6S sat dead center in the glass, like it knew it didn't have to beg. Bright, polished, almost too perfect. I walked past it twice and already felt annoyed, like it was built to impress guys who don't shoot much and charge the rest of us for the show. The guy behind the counter watched me do my lap and said, "You're doing that thing again." I asked what thing. He said, "You already decided you don't like it without ever touching it." That pissed me off more than the price, so I told him to hand it over, mostly to prove I was right. And that's where it started falling apart. In the hand, it didn't feel flashy. It felt tight. Everything lined up like the parts actually belonged together. Then I touched the trigger and caught exactly what I didn't want to catch. It was clean in a way that made my trash talk feel cheap. Not magical, just cared for. The kind of clean you notice the 10th time you draw it, not the first. That's where the money went. Not into the shine, into the details you feel every single time you run it when nobody's watching. Smart buying isn't worshiping pretty. It's paying for what you actually live with. The next one on this list had a louder name and a bigger reputation. I walked in ready to hate that one even harder. I was up late doom scrolling used listings, doing that thing where you try to talk yourself out of spending real money. Every time a python popped up, I said the same thing out loud. Legend tax, like saying it made me the smart one in the room. Then something started bothering me. These guns weren't sitting. Bad photos, lazy descriptions, sometimes even overpriced, and they were still gone in days, not weeks. Not, let me think about it, gone. Guys weren't discounting them. They weren't taking losses. The market just kept paying. That's when it hit different. Most expensive guns punish you twice. Once when you buy them, again when you try to sell. The Python didn't do that. The receipt stayed defensible long after the new gun glow wore off. That's not nostalgia. That's the market quietly saying this one holds. I finally handled one and hated how fast my argument died. It didn't feel like jewelry. It felt like somebody actually cared how the parts fit together. Trigger stayed clean. Lockup felt deliberate. Nothing flashy. Just cared for. The flaw, price messes with your head. You start babying it, but that's also why there's no regret later. The money didn't disappear when the excitement did. The next one on this list didn't have a big name to lean on. It just kept winning after years of boring, everyday ownership. I saw one in a pawn shop outside San Marcos not long ago. It wasn't under the good lights. Beat up rubber grips, cylinder line cut deep, finish worn dull around the muzzle. The tag was still high enough to make me laugh. Who prices a gun like that after it already lived a whole life? Then I picked it up. That's where the joke stopped. The outside looked tired, but the gun didn't feel tired. Lockup was tight. The cylinder turned like it had miles on it, not problems. The trigger didn't try to impress me. It just moved like a tool that's done this too many times to get dramatic. Heavy, solid, like it was built to take whatever you fed it and still be ready the next day. That's the Red Hawk's whole trick. Some revolvers only feel worth the money when they're new and shiny. This one starts making sense when it's scratched up and still feels like it's got years of abuse left. It doesn't care about looking pretty. It cares about not giving you a reason to wonder if it can take it. The flaw's obvious. Big, heavy, rough around the edges. It loses every beauty contest. But if a gun that already looks like this still feels like it's got plenty left, that's where the money went. The last one on this list costs more than it should on paper. But after years of real ownership, a lot of people stop arguing about the price. Most guns get cheaper in your head after you buy them. The Manurhin MR73 didn't. I'd seen the price before and wrote it off fast. French collector nonsense. The kind of number that only makes sense if you're trying to impress someone who doesn't actually shoot. I didn't want to understand it, just wanted to call it overpriced and move on. Then I spent real time with one. Not a quick session, actual time. And what started bothering me wasn't how it shot, it was how it was built. Nothing felt normal, not nice, not premium, just overdone, like someone decided this thing wasn't allowed to loosen up, wear in, or drift at all. The longer I ran it, the more that feeling stuck. I kept looking for the part where it stopped making sense for the money. Didn't find it. That's when it flipped. This isn't priced like a normal revolver because it's not built like one. It's what happens when good enough gets thrown out completely. Yeah, it's expensive. More than most people should spend. You can buy multiple solid revolvers for the same money, but they don't feel like this. And once you notice that, everything else starts feeling like you backed off a little. This wasn't about capacity, features, or what wins on paper. I've owned guns that did more, held more, shot faster, looked better sitting on the bench. Didn't matter. They didn't stay. These did. Not because they're exciting or trendy, but because once you get used to what they give you, everything else starts to feel like you're giving something up. That's a different kind of worth it. The kind you don't notice until you try to replace it and realize you can't. So I'll ask you, what's a gun you thought you'd upgrade from, but it never left your rotation? Or one you trusted until it didn't? There's still one on this list I keep trying to justify replacing. Hasn't happened. I'm Steve, and I don't trust worth it until it costs me something.